How to use credit cards like a millionaire.
It's Brian Preston, the money guy.
Yeah, Brian, I'm super excited about this show because in the financial industry, there are a lot of folks and a lot of people who do not like to approach this topic. And then there are some folks who all they'll talk about is this topic. And so what I think we're going to do today, or what I hope we're going to do, is maybe dispel some of the myths, affirm some of the things that are true about credit cards, and then take it a step further and let you guys know how you should think about using them. And then we're even going to kind of open up our back pockets and show you how we use them.
I think everybody knows credit cards are dangerous, and I don't love the practices of the entire industry because it all gets back to, are you a builder of wealth or are you a consumer of wealth? Mm-hmm. And let's face it, credit cards do kind of, they grease the skids of consumption.
Absolutely.
So it definitely can have some issues. But I did want to put together, I want to put to bed something that I think floats around out there. And I love this because probably everybody who disagrees, I invite you to please leave us some comments on YouTube and engage in conversation. But about everybody we deal with professionally uses credit cards.
Yep.
Look, I know that's going to hurt some of you guys because you have heard that to be good with money, you just don't touch them. You just stay the heck away from them. But from our own, every year we do a wealth study of our clients. Who, by the way, to come work with us, you have to be successful. You have to show that financial mutant mentality. And here's what's probably going to surprise a number of you, especially if you're new to this channel as well as to building financial independence. 99% of our clients use credit cards.
And I think that a lot of folks say, no, well, you can't build wealth that way. You can't, if you're using a credit card, you can't. It's a very different thing between being a credit card user and a credit card abuser or someone who has a problem. And what we found is that wealthy folks, at least in our realm, in our ecosystem, they can use them and they can use them responsibly. They can actually not make them something that's dangerous. They can actually make it a tool that helps on their wealth building journey.
Well, and look, I don't mind making the analogy that there are people that can drink socially. And then there are people who are teetotalers.
Yep, absolutely.
Which, by the way, we went and looked up teetotal to make sure it wasn't, because you have to be careful where things came from. But a lot of people back in the 1800s, they would sign contracts and put a T after their name because it would show that they were abstaining from all alcohol consumption. Well, I think there's a whole group in the financial world where they feel that they have to abstain because they're nervous about that they can't control themselves, they don't use the tool well. And that's the part where I think there are people out there in the financial universe that are pushing, just stay the heck away from these things, never, ever, ever use them. But I wanted to kind of tell you, we're talking, our audience, we know that you guys are financial mutants. If you are a person that does not understand discipline or the ability to control the behavior you expend towards money, you're not who we're talking to. So we're very deliberate on who our audience is. So you have to decide, are you a financial mutant who we are trying to create, or do you need to be the teetotaler of, we called it credit cardaholic, because if you are those person, we'll get into what that means in a second. But first, we want to kind of set the table with, let's go through the history. How did we even get here with credit cards?
Yeah, and I thought this was really interesting, Brian, because this is a little confessional. I did not know this. I did not know the actual history of credit. Now, I know how they've evolved over recent memory, but where it first started and originated. Did you know all of this before we started doing the show research?
Well, I knew the Diners Club stuff, but Daniel went deeper on the research, and I thought this was great, and it made complete sense to me. And the fact that, look, we have this company right here in downtown Franklin, where we're 20-plus employees now. Can you imagine back in the 1900s, if every time we needed to go down the street to go to a local supplier, if I had to have a petty cash where I'm doling out money so we can buy drinks for the office, pads of paper, pencils, whatever they were using back in the 1900s, it would probably be pretty cumbersome. So I think credit became a way that you entice people to use your store brand loyalty or store loyalty. And it also was a convenience thing for the owner of the company, because it sure would be nice if I could just let my employees go buy the supplies they needed for our business, and then I get a bill, a concise bill at the end of the month, and I just pay it off.
Yep.
That's how this all started, because there was these charge coins.
Yeah, Daniel actually found some picture of these. This is a department store charge coin from the early 1900s. I think it's remarkable. It reminded me of like a gym key fob. Now, probably because I think about the gym is why I thought that. But it wasn't something, we think about these credit cards where this transaction happens. This was more a statement saying, hey, I am representing this person or this family or this business. Here's the thing to prove that I'm an authority, to be able to get credit, and they would show this, and the person would go check their ledger and make sure the account was up to balance, and then they would continue to extend credit. So it's kind of like this sort of, hey, my word matters, my word is good, and here's the thing that's going to substantiate that.
And then that kind of left from the coins to the charge plates or charge-up plates.
Yep.
And then from there we went to the Diners Club. And this was in the mid-1950s, that the original Diners Club, where these things were mailed out, and it kind of set fire to, hey, now we have the convenience. Instead of having to carry cash,
Yep.
you just have this card that allows you to extend your purchasing power very easily.
And I think this actually came out of, there was I believe the story is, and Daniel, you can shake your head at me if I'm wrong on this, there was a diner who was out for a business lunch and he'd forgotten his wallet, and that was the whole way that the charge card came together. He was able to say, hey, issue me a card and just let me put it on credit. And it's interesting, and I think about now, it seems like, recently I was traveling, and it seems like now it's almost impossible to operate unless you have some access to some sort of card, some sort of like plastic thing that's not cash. If you need to book a hotel room, or you need to book a trip or a flight, it seems like it's almost a necessity these days. Would you agree with that?
It is, and I will tell you, remember, these were tools of convenience, and it is amazing how we've evolved even more. We could have put it on here, but last time I was down in Georgia, I took my mother out to eat. Well, I announced I was taking the whole family out to eat at our favorite, Lazy Susan, all-you-can-eat type restaurant, and halfway to the restaurant, because it's about a 40-minute drive, I realized I left my wallet in the car because I was traveling. I didn't like sitting.
Move.
And I already had visions of my mom going, oh, you just were offering to pay. You weren't really going to pay. And I remembered Apple Pay.
Oh, yeah.
And I was able to pay for everybody's meal and everything, even without my wallet. So it is amazing how this convenience of purchasing has gotten better. But I got to tell you, there is too much of a good thing, because I want to give you some stats to fast forward to where we are in the present day. And it's not all good. Even though it might be more convenient, people are not using this as efficiently as I'd like them to.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting, we pulled this data from various sources, and this is what we found, is that 76% of Americans right now today have at least one credit card. So 76% of folks have a credit card in their wallet. Well, the alarming statistic that I think is 47% of those folks, of credit card users, carry a balance from month to month.
Yeah.
So right out of the bat, I would make the argument that 47% of users are not using it the right way. They're not following the Money Guy principles, how you should be a credit card user as opposed to a credit card abuser. And then this one, we talked about this. You've seen this number previously. The average American now with a credit card has a balance outstanding of about $5,300.
Credit card debt, because this is something that comes up. I even had somebody on Twitter reach out and ask for clarification. There's a lot of you guys that might have $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 a month, but then you're paying it off, and it's just a continuous $2,000 to $3,000 builds up. You pay it off. That number is not flowing through this $5,300. Daniel was very deliberate in his research in the fact that we found that the average American with credit card debt, meaning they're carrying a balance, that's where the $5,300 is coming from. This is not skewed by how much we're all paying off monthly.
And so then I thought one of the interesting things, obviously one of the some of the proponents out there, those folks who fall into that camp that don't use cards, that don't use credit cards, they say, I just do everything with cash, right? I'm someone who just, if I have cash, I'll do it that way. So we asked Daniel to put together some stats related to card usage versus cash usage. And he found that 80%, this is from Fundera, 80% of Americans prefer some sort of card payments, whether that be a debit card or a credit card. 80% of folks would rather use a card than strictly using cash.
Well, I fall into this in the fact that I never have cash. I mean, because look, I don't work in an industry where cash is kind of
changes hands.
Yeah. I mean, nobody comes in here and gets a spot weld and hands me a $20 bill, because that's where,
if you're going here for your spot welds, you're going to the wrong place.
No, but seriously, there are companies out there where cash is, transactions are done, and those type of people have cash. We never have cash. Everything is done electronically. We collect our fees electronically. We pay. So I never have cash, it seems like, on hand. So I do prefer card payments. It's very convenient to be able to just, be disciplined with my money and then just have a credit card or my Apple Pay to pay the bills.
Now, there is 10% of the population out there that uses cash exclusively. They do not use credit cards. They do not use debit cards. They only use cash. So when you see these folks walking around, they're the folks who have the purse or have the wallet, and they keep the bills, and that's how they track their systems. And I thought that this was sort of an interesting statistic that I would not have guessed. Only 33% of card transactions, though, come from credit cards. So of all of the card transactions, actually the vast majority doesn't happen on credit cards. There are actually more transactions taking place on debit cards than credit cards, which I thought was interesting.
By the way, do you use debit cards?
Never.
Yeah. I'm kind of the same way. I kind of like that separation between me and my bank, and that's what the credit card offers. But there are a lot of people that use a lot of debit cards. And here's why I think it's safer to use a credit card over a debit card is just zero fraud liability. Now, look, I know a lot of you guys are going to put in the comments, your debit card, and it's true, has gotten substantially better at refunding you the money, but there's still, you have to go make a case to get your money back.
Right. Because
a debit card is direct access to your bank. And yes, the banks have gotten very proactive because they want you using the debit cards. But I don't know. I like having that layer of protection where supposedly my only liability is at $50 and that's it.
Well, and fortunately or unfortunately, we've worked with clients in the past who have had identity fraud issues where they've either had a fraudulent thing happen on a credit card, or we've had clients who've had fraudulent things happen with their debit cards. And when it happens on the credit card, it's someone else's money. It's the credit card's money. It's not like you're out. If you have some charges that come up on your debit card and you have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 that just evaporates from your bank account, that can be a real issue. That can cause some real problems. So I think having the credit card does prevent you from getting yourself, even though you'll likely get that money back if you follow the appropriate means, it may put you in a pretty gnarly situation while you're waiting to recover and recoup your funds.
And there's also some additional protections and benefits, perks from using credit cards. We'll get into that in a little bit. But by and large, in my experience, I'm a much more of a credit card user than a debit card user. Matter of fact, I've even had to get onto my bank is that when they send you your ATM card, they always try to give you one that has either the Visa or the MasterCard on it. I always call them like, no, I just want an ATM card, because, by the way, here's a dirty little secret. A lot of times you can just use your ATM card at the drugstore, at the grocery store if you really want to. You can still use your ATM card at those things. They're structured under that network, but I don't want a MasterCard or Visa even on my debit card.
Now, here's something I thought that was interesting, and I want us to kind of think through this because oftentimes at the Money Guy Show we really like to focus on mathematics, right? We kind of like math to direct a lot of the decisions that we make, and one thing that people might not realize is that if you are purely a cash user, and all else equal, using cash is actually more expensive than using cards. And there's actually data to support that.
Yeah, think about it. Every merchant transaction you do, it doesn't matter if you pay cash or credit card, they've already built in, the retailer or the provider of service has built in that additional 2 to 3% of fees into the cost. So if you're paying cash, you're paying for those fees without actually getting any of the benefits.
Exactly. So you're actually, I would argue, if you are an only cash payer, you're actually subsidizing the cost for folks who are using credit cards and are recouping some of that cost through rewards or benefits or other things. So it's something to think about. If you are a true financial mutant who wants to pay less for things than the person sitting next to you or standing behind you in line, maybe you want to reevaluate how you're doing that.
Now, look, I'm going to go ahead because I can already foretell what somebody will say is that, look, you go to some gas stations, they will have a cash price that's different than the credit card.
Sure.
And that is trying to discount for those merchant fees at the credit card companies. And then there's also, I can't help but think about a restaurant we have here in town.
I was thinking
that they have a sign right by the cash register that says, hey, we give a discount if you pay in cash. Now, yes, they might be avoiding merchant fees, but I can't help but think that probably they're doing a Studio 54
you know what?
where they're running two sets of books.
That's on them.
But that's on them. But that's just my accounting background. I always get raised my eyebrows.
When you go there, but what I always do is I say, okay, is the discount I'm getting greater than the rewards I'm getting on my card? Yeah. And I end up paying cash. Now, I get really annoyed because I don't carry a ton of cash on me. When I'm standing there, I'm like, oh yeah, and I pull up my wallet and I don't have enough cash. So I feel like I'm losing on the transaction a little bit by not getting that discount, but it is something to keep an eye on.
So I feel like we just gave a solid benefit to credit cards in the fact that since retailers are already charging these fees to all their customers, a lot of our cash people will be like, yeah, guys, but you're not getting into the behavior problem. So I want to be fully transparent because I like to think with the Money Guy Show, we try to tell you all sides, a very balanced approach so you can decide what's best for you. Because remember, we're trying to appeal to the financial mutants out there. And without a doubt, credit cards make it so much easier to spend money that there has been research on the fact that we do spend more using credit cards versus if you actually had to use cold, hard cash.
Yeah, there's something about tactile when you're holding cash and you go out and you have $20 in your hand and you give them the $20 bill and you get change, you get 15 back, and then you have to start paying. There's something psychological about seeing that stack of money disappear. That's why the envelope system works so well for folks who are just figuring out budgeting and just learning budgeting. If you're not someone who has that discipline to make sure that you're trying to at least spend the same amount, you could get yourself in a pickle where you are spending a lot more because no matter how many times you swipe that credit card, it's not getting any smaller. It's not getting any less tactile like that cash is.
There was a stat that kind of blew my mind a little bit. It says people on average spend 12 to 18% more using credit cards instead of cash, according to Dun and Bradstreet. Now, here's the thing that hit me when I was reading that. As I was thinking about the financial order of operations, the automatic savings, how do you build financial independence? And remember, we want everybody saving 20 to 25% of their gross income, meaning you're saving your army of dollar bills, that cash, that margin, it's actually getting invested so it can work just as hard as you do. So if I find out people are spending 12 to 18% more because they're using credit cards versus cash, I think you need to do the 30,000 foot view down of your personal finances to make sure, am I actually doing things right with savings? Because look, if you have a budget, a cash management plan, and everything's automated to where it's supposed to go, I'm perfectly fine that you're using credit cards. There's so much more convenience. There's perks. But if you find that you're a person that uses credit cards, but you're not saving 20, 25% because it's encouraging your consumption, take a cold hard look on that and see if you do need to make some changes in your life.
Now, I don't have this fully vetted, Brian, but I'm kind of thinking through. I've got two young girls, and today actually is my youngest daughter's birthday, and I just know I'm going to blink, and before long they're going to be leaving the house, right? That's just going to happen. And one of the things I think about is when they leave, I want them to have like sound financial management in place, but I do worry that we're moving to this world where currency is more and more digital. People are using cards. I'm wondering, and you have an older daughter, I'm curious if you do this, like when you're teaching her about how to manage her money and how to do her finances, does she actually use cash for most of the transactions she does and have to like budget about what comes in and what goes out? Or has she figured out as a new spender, as an early, coming into having to spend her own money, has she figured out how to keep track of it digitally?
No, I think right now she's still in the cash world. But I know it's just a matter of time. I mean, any time now that it's going to be, Dad, can I have my own Venmo account? You know that's coming because I think that happens more often instead of the basic cash account that somebody my age went and got, where they were giving out toasters and other things at the bank. Now, young, people want to have a Venmo account. I mean, because it's easier to transact money back and forth. And Venmo might even be so 2017, 2018
Venmo still
that there's
sounds
a whole
cool to
new
me.
thing.
There might be something else now. I'm looking at the content. There might be something else that's even better.
But I do think it's understanding that whether it's digital currency, Venmos, credit cards, we are getting away from just straight up hard cash. And I think that's why we want to equip you with understanding the tools of how do you do this well. And so I think we need to kind of take a step back and go through some credit card basics before we tell you how millionaires and how to master the skill set of using credit cards well.
Yeah, and so I think one thing that you're hearing us say, and we've said it over and over and over and over again, and we will continue to say it over again, is that credit card use is okay. Credit card use is permissible. Credit card use is something that can be a valuable resource in your financial circumstance. Credit card debt is a very, very different thing.
Yeah, you should never carry a balance. If you're not paying it off monthly, you're doing it wrong. And we've used this analogy. I'm probably blowing up the notes here because I talk about it all the time. Credit cards are a chainsaw.
Yep.
It's a tool that you have out there in your work shed that makes jobs easier, but it is not appropriate for all things. And this is something I did plumbing back when I was in college. I was kind of a plumber's apprentice. And I have found out, because when I explained how we roughed in the plumbing, I found out that my let's just say mentor in the plumbing was doing things probably not in the safest way, was we would cut stuff out with a chainsaw. And I have found out that is very dangerous.
I've not seen a lot of plumbers carry
chainsaws.
No,
I know. It's not the ideal thing. I mean, I'm not so sure it's the greatest way to be cutting in where you go rough in pipes and other things. And I remember, but that's the thing, is that was not the appropriate tool. It was effective. It was fast. But it was definitely not the appropriate tool for what would probably be considered code or best practices if you were doing plumbing. Well, it's the same thing with credit cards and your finances, and the fact that you will hopefully have a whole arsenal of tools in your financial life. You're going to have your investments. You're going to have your credit cards, which allow purchasing to be easier. But if you're not taking into account how all this fits together into a full plan, you're missing it, because if you're using the credit card for everything, that might not be the appropriate tool. But the biggest thing to understand is credit card debt is no-go land. If you're not paying it off monthly, you might just need to go back to that teetotal status and just cut it out until you can come back with a more mature version of yourself that doesn't struggle with credit card debt.
And again, the reason in our mind is very much mathematical. You hear us all the time talk about wealth building and how compounding growth can be an ultimate just life changer in terms of your wealth building journey. Well, it can also work against you, and that's what credit cards or building debt in that way does. You can see on the screen the average interest rate for a credit card right now is a little over 16%. If we were to do an illustration showing you if your money could go out there and earn 16%, you would be amazed at how fast your army of dollar bills can move. So we want to walk through just a quick illustration to show how small decisions can have very large impacts and how credit card debt can really be absolutely hazardous to your long-term wealth building. So this is what we came up with. We said, let's think about a 22-year-old that has an average credit card balance making the minimum monthly payment. And so that you know, that average interest rate right now, we just said, is a little over 16%. If you're someone who just wants to pay the minimum on a credit card, usually it's the greater of $25 a month or 3% of the outstanding balance. It's whichever one is larger. And we just found out that the average credit card balance is a touch over $5,300. Well, if you were someone just paying that minimum payment, that $5,300 over the life of that credit card, you would pay back the $5,300 in principal, but you would also have interest charges of $3,700. So you will have spent a total of $9,000 on that single purchase, and it would have taken you almost a little over 12 and a half years to have paid that off.
So here's what I think is interesting. And this is something, guys, we're trying to train you to be a financial mutant here. And you have to remember your guideline of looking at your financial life is, am I a builder of wealth or am I a consumer of wealth? Those are two things. And we frame a lot of stuff in incremental decision making, meaning that I want you to look at it as a fork in the road moment where you're asking yourself, am I going left to build wealth or am I going right where I consume wealth? When you look at this and you say, okay, I'm going to make $5,300 of purchases and they're going to cost me $9,000, that by itself is bad.
Yep.
But I'm telling you from a long-term perspective of compounding interest of what your army of dollar bills could be worth, the opportunity cost of your bad decision making, this $9,000 is going to look like chump change.
It's the tip of the iceberg.
And that's what, let us show you how bad this can be, where $5,000 can turn into a six-figure mistake in your long-term financial life.
Yeah, so let's say instead of that credit card purchase where you were making that minimum payment, what if instead you took those dollars and you were investing it for your financial well-being in the future? Well, over that 12-and-a-half-year period, that $9,000 that you would have deployed would have turned into $22,000. So instead of satisfying a $5,300 debt with $9,000, you've taken $9,000 and turned it into $22,000 over 12-and-a-half years. But that's only part of the story. If then you let that $22,000 that you built over that 12-and-a-half-year time period, if you were to let it grow all the way until you get to retirement, at age 65, you would have over $460,000. Remember, you only contributed, you only took $9,000 of your dollars, and it turned into almost $500,000. So when you look at these two decisions, one decision is, okay, I can go buy that $5,300 thing and I can put it on a credit card, and so long as I can afford the minimum monthly payment, I can afford it. I'm just going to do that. Or you can be a financial mutant and say, you know what, I'm going to take that money that I was going to spend on that minimum payment, and instead I'm going to take and build those dollars in my army of dollar bills. And that $5,000 decision could have really been almost a $500,000 decision by retirement.
And that's why it's back to the fork in the road moment. You have to ask yourself, are you a builder of wealth versus a consumer of wealth? And I think a lot of people, they get so focused on, I can afford the payment, I can afford to make the minimum, that they're not thinking, they're thinking income statement versus thinking balance sheet or net worth statement. And I'm trying to get you to step outside of living for today to think about that great, big, beautiful tomorrow. And the fact that, guys, every decision you make, now don't mishear me here and think that I'm telling you not to go get the Starbucks coffee, because I think everybody loves poking fun of all the pundits who turn in the coffee decision into what blows up your financial life. It is not the coffee decision. It is the decision to not think about each incremental decision you're making in your life. How does this fit into my overall financial life? Am I saving for the future? Yep. Am I building financial independence so my money can work harder for me than I can with my hands, my back, my brain? That's ultimately what you're trying to do. And it is those incremental decisions. It might not be buying the Starbucks, but it is the fact that instead of spending the $5,000 on credit card debt that then turned into $9,000 because of the interest and the minimum payments, that type of stuff that where the money was going into mutual funds, index funds, that's what creates financial independence, because you're going to look back in 30 years, you're going to look back in 20 years and go, holy cow, how did I get this much money? And it was all through making good decision making of making sure your army of dollar bills were working in conjunction with your consumption, with your credit card use.
Now, there are voices out there, Brian, that disagree with us. I mean, there are voices that if they were sitting out there, I'm sure they would be yelling at the screen or yelling at their ears right now, the fact that we're saying this. And so we thought to do service to the folks who fall into that camp, are there times when you should not use credit cards? Are there times where that you should actually be a teetotaler? And you should fall into the camp where they say, no way, no how, not ever, never. Are there times when that is the right answer for folks?
Yeah, it's like most things we talk about on the show. I'm constantly getting you to ask why, to take an inventory of yourself. So I want you to throw cold water on your face, whatever you have to do, and say, what type of person am I? If you're carrying a credit card balance, shut it off. Quit using it. I mean, you literally could do the credit freeze where you put it in the cup of water, put it in the freezer. Quit using it. Come back to it after you've matured to the point that you're saving the 20 to 25% and you're not having any trouble living within your means. But if you're a person that you've got it, I mean, basic discipline is one of those things where, you know, at the end of the month, you're saving, you've created an automatic savings plan, you're already quite disciplined in how you're using credit cards. I think you're fine. So it's one of those things. Look at yourself, take an inventory. Are you carrying a balance? It's that simple. If you're carrying a balance, you're doing it wrong. Go to teetotal status. if you're paying it off every month and you're still checking the boxes on the other financial aspects of your life, what's wrong? What you know how to use the chainsaw effectively, and you're very thankful that you have a chainsaw in your arsenal of tools versus having to go over there with the axe and start just pounding it, spending 30 minutes cutting down the tree versus something you can do in really 30 seconds.
You just said something so interesting right there, Brian. Having all the other boxes checked. Because I imagine if you're listening to a financial show, there's a chance you have a natural affinity for this. And it's like, hey, guys, I have no problem with credit cards. I don't have a balance. I pay it off every single month. So you know what? I'm good. And while, yes, that is great, if you're not doing the other part, if you're not someone who is saving that 20 to 25%, you may not even recognize that by you using that credit card, you're like, hey, Starbucks isn't going to blow up my financial situation. But maybe if I'm using my credit card, I'm likely to go to Starbucks 5 days a week instead of 1 day a week. And because of that decision at the end of the month, and I say, okay, well, how much I'm going to put in my Roth? Well, I can't do 500 this month to max it out. I'm going to do 100. If you find yourself, even if you're paying off those credit cards every month, but you're not actually actively saving, you may want to rethink the way you're doing it. You may need to, for a season, go back to the elementary steps. Go back to the budgets. Give yourself a $20 bill at the beginning of every week. Say, hey, this is my Starbucks $20 bill, and I'm going to use this. And when it runs out, I'm not going to go anymore, to make sure that you are paying yourself in wealth building. Because I think that, yes, we always hear the devastating stories of credit cards and how folks run up the credit card debt and how it's detrimental. I think for folks who are well-reasoned, it's a lot more sneaky than that. It's a lot more suspicious than that. And that's why paying yourself first is so valuable when it comes to long-term wealth building.
So now that we've put where the rail is, or where the protective place where you don't get yourself off the road or in the ditch financially, let's talk about some of the things you ought to look for in a credit card.
Yep.
If you have made it, you are in the financial mutant status, you can use this tool effectively. Let's talk about some of those benefits and perks. And we compiled what these were, like fraud protection. We've already told you, it's nice, especially when you're going on the internet, where you don't actually see the person, you're not looking them in the eyeballs that you're buying the goods or services from. It's nice knowing you're using the bank's money with really your only really liability or risk is $50. And by the way, having cards compromised, I've had it happen so much, nobody ever actually enforces the $50. The credit card companies gladly reimburse. They take care of it. They do the research. And by the way, this is also even awesome when you get into, I had a friend who had a rental car where he returned the rental car, but it was after hours. And then, like, the rental car company for the next month was harassing him, saying, we never got that car.
No.
So they were just running up fees. You know how he finally solved it? Because he spent a few weeks actually trying to correspond with the rental car agency to fix the issue himself. Finally, just called the dispute services of the credit card company. They said, yeah, we'll take it from here.
And
he never heard another thing about it.
Yep.
And that's why it's kind of nice from the fraud protection or things that are just uncertain how it will end. You've got having a big bank in your corner is actually a very valuable resource.
The second benefit, and this is the one that I think people most often think about, is there are points and rewards systems with credit cards. Some credit cards will give you cash back, and some credit cards will give you miles, or some credit cards will give you shopping discounts. There are, depending on your consumption behavior, there are actually rewards or benefits or kickbacks you can receive depending on the cards that you use. That's another benefit to look for. Make sure you have one that matches your consumption style.
Extended warranties. I mean, look, I've used this probably 3 times where I had a Roku box go out on me one year, and I looked at it and it was exactly 13 months after I'd bought it. Well, it had a 1-year warranty. Fortunately, the credit card company bought me a new Roku box. It was kind of nice having that extended warranty. Price matching?
This is one, Brian, I got to say, man, I hate telling you, you teach me all these things. This is one that you taught me because I didn't know about this one until I actually saw you, and this is like years and years ago. I've seen you do this. I've seen you actually make this phone call saying, hey, I bought this thing, and then I noticed that it was a lot cheaper. Hey, what can you do for that? Say, okay, hey, we'll take care of it. We'll actually match that if you use our card to make your purchases.
And then another benefit as we kind of close this out is just insurance. I mean, it's kind of nice that, a lot of times you're getting protection, especially when you travel, that you don't even probably realize. I mean, if you lose luggage, they got you covered. If you rented a car, they got you covered. There's a lot of things that are going on there. If there's delays in your travel, they got you covered. You have some, not only do they protect you from fraud, they give you the bank negotiating for you if you have a dispute, but it's nice that they do give you some travel and insurance protections as well.
Another benefit you can look for is convenience. If you shop at certain places, it's not uncommon for cards to offer you free shipping or expedited shipping or other services like that might make the purchasing or buying experience a little more beneficial and more convenient for you. So you want to look for those kind of benefits, again, depending on your unique consumption behavior.
And then the last one we put on here is you should never use this, but it's just nice to know what your interest rate is on the card. Just because, look, I never, ever want you to have interest accumulate on your credit card. But that doesn't mean that you just stick your head in the sand and you let them have a 50% interest rate on you. Not that I think those exist. We did a little exercise in the office.
I was wondering if you were going to share it. Because here's what's so funny. In the chat right now, one of the things we do is we live stream these shows, and there's a live chat going on, and I'm kind of trying to stay a little plugged into that. And we're having a lot of people say, hey, sometimes emergencies happen. Sometimes a thing happens, and you have to have a credit card balance for some reason or the other. Well, that's the real reason you want to make sure you keep an eye on the interest rate. Because if you find yourself in that situation, it could play in. It could be beneficial. And so we had a little conversation.
I'll hold off on interest rates that we each pay, or we don't pay, or what's on the card, because we don't pay any interest.
Neither of us knew. I
didn't know. We had to go look on the statements.
We did not know. So, by the way, if you want to know what the interest rate on your credit card is, it's actually on the bottom of your statement. I learned a new thing this week when we were having our little competition.
So we'll get to that, because in a minute we're going to disclose what's in our wallet, and I wanted to, but I'll tell you what we found in that research. But let's kind of transition. I want to talk about how do you use credit cards like a millionaire, because I think here's the little thing you guys need to understand. When you're getting information from content creators, one of the biggest ways to get paid for content creation is for credit card affiliate fees, meaning that you put a link on your website, every credit card that's opened, they make good money off of that. We don't do any of that stuff. So that's why I want to give you kind of hopefully a balanced approach to this, because we don't make money off of affiliate fees or anything like that. So I want to tell you how to use credit cards like a millionaire. And the first one is going to go against what you see from a lot of bloggers, is that you need to recognize that time is money.
Yeah, I get people ask me questions about this all the time. They get lost in it. They'll say, hey, I want to maximize.
Yeah, well, financial mutants in general, I always tell you, I want my financial mutants to make your money go 3 to 5% further than the average person. But there is that you can go too far with this and turn it into this wild goose chase or an epic journey to nowhere, because you'll be chasing points, opening up credit cards so you can go get free vacations. There's a whole industry focused on blogs and other things on how to maximize these things. But I always ask myself, man, are they getting busy doing nothing? Because their time has to be worth something.
Yeah, so Daniel told us there's a guy, he's known as the points guy, and apparently he has created what was described as a thriving business.
Well, good for him. I mean, but he's a
with 100 employees.
That's good for him.
With 100 employees.
But that's not how he's making his money through the credit cards. He's making his money by people coming to his points thing to see how to do this, and then he's employing people. So don't get confused by that. You don't make a lot of money by having 100 credit cards.
That's right.
You just don't. Yes, you'll get some great perks, but you have to keep up with it. There's a lot of exposure. I just don't like getting busy doing nothing, and I think people turn this hobby into something that really distracts them from making overall great financial decisions.
One of the questions we asked is as we were having sort of our pre-show, our content prep, we asked the question, well, how many is too much? Yeah. And the question that you have to answer, well, how many is too many credit cards, is, well, who has the most credit cards? And I don't know why this was a super interesting thing, but there's actually a guy in Santa Clara, California, that has 1,497 credit cards, and his available limit is $1.7 million. Now, I think the story here is he was wanting to set a Guinness World Record. I don't know that having that many credit cards with that large of a limit actually adds a whole lot of value to his overall financial life. I don't know that this is something that I would want in my tool belt, because when I look at all those credit cards, you know what I see? tons of opportunities for hassles and headaches and fraud alerts. And hey, have you ever had a credit card that you like, for some reason there was a bill that came in that like it just slipped through the cracks and then you caught it like a month or two later? Imagine if you had 1,500 credit cards with that going on. So you want to make sure you keep this in line with what's actually actionable inside of your financial life.
This gives me anxiety because what happens if any of these cards decide they want to start charging an annual $29 fee? Is he going to be able to keep up with the 1,497 cards to know what the terms are if somebody stole access to it? That looks like a whole lot of work, not creating a lot of wealth from that. So gives him notoriety. Good for him. I guess that's his hobby. But that's not something, like I said, don't get busy doing nothing. And that's the same reason I used to play the category. Some of my cards, like Discover, is bad about this. They have rotating categories. Drives me crazy. I want to know when I'm using my card, I want to know what it does well and not have to worry about rotating categories because that's just confusion. Why does it have to have confusion? I just want to know what works best.
I myself, I don't know if this is an actual term. I like to consider myself a passive credit card user, meaning like I don't really want to think about, okay, what time of the month is it? Okay, I'm at the grocery store. Okay, which one of the, okay, when I go to groceries, it's this one. When I go to do travel, it's this one. I like keeping it very, very simple because if I'm having to expend energy, you just said this already, time is money. If I'm going to spend more time thinking about those things, it's probably not allowing me to focus on building my army of dollar bills over the long term.
And more than likely, if you're other member of your house, your spouse, might not be a financial mutant like you. And if you want to encourage good use, keep it as simple as possible because rotating categories is just a complexity that I don't like. I want to talk about how you maximize rewards. Here's a behavioral thing. We've told you that from the research, credit cards have a downside is that people spend 18 to 20% more using credit cards than they would if they were using cold, hard cash. But here's a credit card hack. Do stuff you have to pay anyway. I just paid my homeowner's insurance with a credit card.
I literally just did the same thing.
So I did this just last night. Matter of fact, so I did my even though, by the way, I have escrow. So I don't know how this is all. I mean, I'm sure I'm just going to get a big, huge escrow.
Mine was umbrella.
No, but I try to pay my property and casualty insurance with my credit card. I try to pay all my utilities with credit cards because it's not like I'm over there when I'm cutting up the heating or air conditioning. I'm going, because I use a credit card, it's 18% more. No, these are things that they're fixed in what you're spending. So I try to get as many of those things running through my credit cards to maximize rewards as possible.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. I get really excited.
You rang the bell. You got excited. So let's talk about, because now I want to focus on the actual use. So a lot of you guys, once again, take inventory of yourself. Are you the type of person that's a single card user, or are you that financial mutant that feels like you need to get a little bit more so you're a multiple card user? I want to talk about that a little bit. So if you're a single card approach, we want you to find a card that does everything well.
You just want a nice, middle-of-the-road, robust credit card that you don't have to do a lot of thinking about. It just has a decent benefit. Whatever your appetite for benefits is. If you're a big traveler, maybe it's a card that gives you miles. If you're a big cash back person, maybe it's one that pays a stated, 2% back
on
no
everything.
Matter what you're doing. It pays on everything. You just want a good one. Now, this is interesting. Earlier on in life, many, many, many years ago when I was a young man, I had some friends who would say, hey, Bo, I want to get that credit card you told me about, and I went to apply and I couldn't get it. It is one of those things, your ability to get good or better cards will grow as your financial maturity moves along, as your credit improves and as you have a track record. If you're out there and you're an 18 or 19-year-old and you're getting your very first credit card, you might not be able to get the absolute best credit card available to you, but that's okay. Just know that in time, you're going to be working towards that.
Let's talk about a multiple card approach.
Sure.
I like still that same single card that you had that was just a great generalist. Typically, like for me, that would be like a cash back card that gives you 2% on everything. I still think that is something that will be used in a multiple card strategy because that's just your default if you don't have a specialized category, because you'll use the specialized cards for, like, some cards will give you 3 to 5% back on eating out, or when you travel, or on groceries, or gas. It's nice that when you're getting 4 to 5% back on all gas purchases.
Absolutely.
There are cards that specialize in those things. I think that you could look at it as a generalist with general. If you don't know, just use the general card. But then you can add specialized cards for certain things that you know you're going to be spending money on.
And those specialized cards can be like general, right, like gas, or they can be specific specialized cards. Now, I'm not a huge proponent of store credit cards. However, if there are places you know that you shop a lot or services that you use a lot, and there's a valuable benefit to having their specific card, I don't think that's crazy. If it's money you know you're going to be spending there anyways because you have a habit or a history of doing that, I don't think that store credit cards, a single one or a few, depending on your consumption behavior, is the craziest thing in the world.
Well, especially because a lot of these cards are now at 5%.
Yep.
And as you said, if you're already spending the money, you might as well take advantage of it. But we wanted to go a step further because I said, well, you know what? We're talking very contextual. We're talking about the concept.
And they want me.
But what you guys want to know, well, what are you guys doing? What do Brian and Bo have in their wallet? So we figured, let's just tell them.
We're going to show them to you.
What's funny is I think we actually got some laughs from the crew when we started throwing the cards down. Because, by the way, they look very similar. There's a few tweaks. So the first one.
Hold on, before we do this, I feel like, we probably ought to do this, right? This is not a recommendation.
Oh, yeah. We don't make any money off this.
We're not suggesting you go out and do this.
Yeah.
We're just sharing with you, these are the cards that we use that make sense for us and our families.
And look, I'm an old timer, so maybe I'm expecting in the comments section, if you know there's a card that whoops up on every one of these cards that we use, tell us. Tell the Money Guy family so we can go do our own due diligence. These are not recommendations. These are not endorsements. We get nothing off of this. We just wanted to, be transparent.
Yep.
Let the Money Guy family know what are we actually doing with our own money.
All right, so let's open up our wallets. The first one is the green one. This is the Fidelity Rewards Visa card.
This is the good generalist card because it does 2% of everything with no limit. So if I don't know what I'm using, or if there's something that has a better benefit, I just go with the Fidelity Rewards Visa card. And it's 2% directly deposited into my joint investment account.
That's what I was going to say. Well, I love this card because rather than getting the check and having to go deposit it, it will automatically deposit those rewards into an investment account. And you can even have it deposited straight into your Roth IRA if you want, or you can have it deposited in your taxable brokerage account. It is a great way to subconsciously allow your army of dollar bills to start building if you have accounts at Fidelity. I love this card for that reason.
The next card, we did years ago. If you go check the archives, we did the grocery challenge where we all went to grocery stores. We went to like discount places. And then we went to like the super Target.
Yep.
And we want to see who got the best deal. This card, because it's 5% off everything that you use. After I did that episode, I told my wife, yes, we can get the Target Red card because it is a 5% discount on whatever you spend at Target. We buy enough stuff at Target that it made sense to maximize that benefit.
Now, I'll be honest. I used to have a little bit of shame having this card. I was like, oh, man, I've got the Target. But I thought, no, that's crazy. We shop at Target. We have a family that's growing. We're at Target all the time. So if I'm going to be at Target, my wife's going to be at Target, it's crazy to walk away from that 5%. And with that, you also get free shipping. So it makes online shopping at Target an absolute breeze. I'm a huge proponent for the Target Red card.
The next one, this is only in my wallet. We both, so far, both Bo and myself have the Fidelity Rewards card. We both have the Target Red card. The next one, by the way, this one is not good financial sense. This is more of a sentimental, emotional. I have a Disney Visa. My wife likes that we get to go whenever we're in the parks, that we get to go in that special room that Chase holders with the Disney card.
I don't even know about that room.
The benefits on this card are not that great. There's even an annual fee on this. It's not perfect, but if it makes you happy every time you see it, happy, and it is nice. I mean, she chose that. Mine has Yoda on it actually. So I mean, it's kind of, that's what I have but it's more sentimental than it is analytical.
Sure. This next card, this is one, and by the way, I love this because people are chiming in with all their stuff. Everyone, this won't be incredibly surprising. The City Costco Anywhere card.
We both have this one. Yep. This is the Costco card. Look, I loved when I moved to Tennessee because there was not a Costco by me when we lived in South Atlanta. I moved up here. This store is made for nerdy people like me because they have great technology. They have great gizmos, as well as they give you huge discounts if you buy mass bulk. I love this place, but they've gone even deeper in the fact that you can get a Visa card that sweetens up your rebate with them, but it also allows gas purchases. You get a huge rebate discount on that.
Travel, this card's great for travel purchases.
Even if you're not using it at Costco gas stations, you still get a big, gas reward on that. It's great for travel. It doesn't have a lot of the international fees. When I was just in Mexico, I used this card was my travel card because I knew it didn't have all the fees associated with it. So we like this card. It's a good one for a lot of general stuff, like gas. And I use this one.
I use this one. This is my restaurant card because it pays really good for like restaurants and eating out. So it's a really valuable benefit if you go out to eat. I think the Costco card is great for that. This next one.
I'm jealous of this one.
I'm getting choked up. This next one's one that I have in my wallet. I don't think you have this one in your
wallet. I should have this one in my wallet because we have an addiction to smiling boxes, but I don't want to have any more credit cards.
The Amazon Prime Visa. This card is absolutely fantastic for two reasons. One, because my wife really likes to go to Whole Foods, and so we get a really big discount at Whole Foods. And then obviously whenever we shop on Amazon, this card is fantastic for that. We accumulate. I've got so many Amazon points. I don't know what I'm building them for because I just keep building the points there to be able to use them. You know what? I'm buying my daughter a new mattress. I'm probably going to end up buying it with points because it's just there. So I absolutely love having this Amazon Prime Visa. Again, we designed our credit cards to be around the place that we already spend money. There are no credit cards that we have said, oh, that store sounds cool. I'll go get a credit card there and then shopping there. It was places that we were already shopping, and this just allowed us, in true financial mutant fashion, to allow our dollars to stretch 5 to 10% further than our peers.
And then the last card we put on here is just we do own several businesses, and you got to have credit cards for office supplies. Like I said, remember the example I was talking about earlier. If we were back in the 1900s and I was sending out my 20 employees to go buy supplies for the company, it's kind of a pain if I had to keep petty cash here to dole out to every one of them. So we give cards to a lot of our employees, and it's kind of nice. Everybody having a card, but then we get one back. And I like the Chase Ink is the one we use. I'd be curious if anybody has, if you put it in the comment section, if you know of a better business card. What I liked about this one, it gives you 5% back on office supplies. If you put utilities for your business on the credit card, you get 5% back on that. So there are some sweet perks there on the rebates that you get.
So the magic number is different for every person. If you want to know for Brian, if you take away the business card, because that's sort of a unique thing, we're both four card folks. So we have a multi-card approach, but it's not like we're rotating through 10 different cards. This is very manageable, and it's one of those things that just allows us again to be financial mutants, but not get busy doing nothing. Credit cards are a tool. They're something that can be incredibly useful if used correctly, but you have to make sure that you're using them correctly.
Well, I started thinking about, I've been managing money for decades now, and I have yet to have a single customer or client come to us and say, I made my millions doing credit cards.
Card rewards.
So, I mean, this thing, realize it is a convenience. It is a tool, exactly what Bo just said, but this is not what's going to create wealth for you. This is something, that's why I talk about constantly. We talk about the financial order of operations, and you go to moneyguy.com/resources. That's wealth building is, building your army of dollar bills, creating automatic investments. That's where wealth comes from. This is more of a convenience that can turn into a distraction if you're not respecting the discipline that goes into credit card use. So that's why we wanted to do a show talking about how we use credit cards, how millionaires have used credit cards, but then also how don't let this be the distraction. Don't get busy doing nothing. Just let this be a facet of your financial life, but don't lose focus on what the goal is for that great, big, beautiful tomorrow and what's actually going to create that. It won't be credit cards. It's going to be how much of your money you're building for the future. Don't lose focus of that.
If you like tools that help make your financial life easier, better, move along further, you should go to the website, moneyguy.com/resources. Brian already mentioned we have the financial order of operations, food deliverable out there, but we have a ton more a ton of other resources. We have a tax guide. We have how powerful are your dollars. Hey, if you want your baby to be a millionaire, how do you do that? We have all these things you can go work through. They are 100% absolutely free. Go download them, use them. Make sure you're letting those resources help you take your finances to the next level.
Guys, thanks so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Brian Preston, Mr. Bo Hansen. Money Guy team, out.